We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Ross School Board meeting work session. It's Thursday, November 17th, 2022. Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Present.
Mr. Schnell?
Here.
Mrs. Webb?
Here.
Mr. Van Winkle?
Here. Mrs. Hayes will be walking in kind of in the middle of the work session, so
I'm present.
she's coming from work. So with that being said, we'll turn it straight over to you, Dr. Kunkel.
Thank you. Before we get into the agenda, I just want to say thank you to the Guest Ross Committee. I know that a lot of parents and community members spend a lot of time behind the scenes and also on the forefront of our levy campaign. So I just want to say thank you to the people that put time into that. Tonight we're not going to discuss the levy. The plan moving forward would be our voter data comes back in the next couple weeks, and then the December board meeting, we'll have a public work session and discuss voter data and potential next steps. So that's in December, I think the 15th, that Thursday, that's the plan for the next steps. Tonight, we've got two presentations. One, Mr. Beck is going to present the athletics update for the fall time, and then we'll get into the five-year forecast with Mrs. Logan. So with that being said, Mr. Beck, the floor is yours, and thank you for coming.
All right. First of all, thank you for having me. This session is more to just kind of keep the board informed of all the great things that are going on in the athletic department. Generally speaking, it's a recap of our fall season. At the end of the year, we'll have all of our coaches who have received accolades, as well as athletes who have committed to play at the next level, as well as Player of the Year recognition, come for a all athletic department recognition. Just with all the different schedules going on and how many multi-sport athletes we have, it makes it really hard. So we will certainly have everybody in person to be acknowledged. All right. So the first thing here, just to kind of recap or to refresh your memory, if this has slipped you at all, this is the mission statement of the Ross Athletic Department, and the emphasis there is learning opportunities for student athletes for all ages and through all sport. Learning, I would say, is the key word there. Because student is the operative phrase in student athlete, and I think we do a great job of that, and that's reflective of the culture that has been built over previous years, and it continues to thrive. So just to give a broader look at our athletic teams, I wanted to show the previous year as well as this year so you can see the lasting impact of the culture that has been developed, is continuing to be developed. And it's a testament to our coaches and our student athletes and our families for continuing their efforts towards maximizing their efficiency and effectiveness in their selected area. You can see there second place in boys and girls cross country, third place in boys golf, and third place in football. Relatively stable from the previous year. Girls golf was fourth place this year in the SWAC, and then we'll talk championships here. Boys soccer for the fourth consecutive season won our conference title. So you think about that as far as the senior class, especially with the difficult things that the seniors had to go through to win it all 4 years in your high school career is quite an accomplishment. So kudos to our boys soccer team, Coach Bush, for their fourth consecutive SWAC title. Girls soccer, third consecutive SWAC title. Again, just an incredible feat there to win it 3 straight years. And success in the postseason is a little bit difficult given the circumstances we face this year with our divisional move. And I'll talk about that very briefly here in a second. But 4 and 3 consecutive titles for soccer. Girls tennis, Coach Bolin and her staff with their third consecutive title as well. And kind of a unique accolade for their team is they did not lose a single head-to-head match the entire season. So they went through the year undefeated. Girls soccer did that as well. They did have a draw, but just to run through the slate that they did is really an incredible accomplishment. Sarah McGinnis was undefeated as an individual. So another SWAC title there for our tennis program. Volleyball was fourth place, and they were in, I believe, 8 5-set matches. So you could see just how close, you could go from a fourth place to a second place or a first place, with a couple breaks, a couple couple good breaks there. So a really, really effective year for our high school teams. And this is where we stand in the All Sports Trophy for our conference. This is our last year in this conference. So I think our athletes and coaches are really trying to leave this conference, leave their legacy on the conference by taking this All Sports Trophy. After the fall season, we find ourselves in first place by 1 point over Harrison. And I know our winter coaches are fully aware of this and feel that responsibility and pressure a little bit. That being said, they also understand that there's much more to it than the All Sports Trophy. It is that academic piece. It is the co-curricular piece of high school athletics. So a really, really good fall season. All right, and we could talk about a couple of the highlights here. Football and cheer. I thought this was interesting. As I said before, we did move up a division in every single sport. Football was moved up to Division II because of the football model. There are 7 divisions in football. We went from 3 to 2 and accomplished our first Division II playoff victory in school history, which was bittersweet for us because it was also a revenge game over Northwest after dropping our regular season contest to them in a heartbreaking fashion. So congratulations to the football team on that school history. Girls soccer beat Harrison in the first round of Division I playoffs. They got moved up to Division I, as did all of our other sports. But the cool thing about the Harrison victory was we all know the expression, it's really tough to beat a team 3 times in a season, and our girls soccer program did that. So really cool experience for our girls to beat a league foe and geographical rival right down the street in Harrison. They lost to Loveland the next round, and it was a heartbreaker. Neck and neck the whole match. Ended up losing 2-1. We were down a couple athletes. And not to use that as an excuse, but our girls really competed well that night. And Loveland's athletic director came up to us afterwards and said that was the best challenge we've seen all year. Loveland, the week before, beat nationally ranked Milford. So it just goes to show how close we really were to having a heck of a playoff run. Loveland went on to win the district title. So another great feat for the soccer team. And then our tennis program in Division I again won a total of 7 matches in the tournament. So really, all in all, a really, really good showing in our regular season and postseason. Just very briefly, I will touch base on the Division I conversation. We are aware of the disparity in the Division I model. And as of 2 weeks ago, about 20 schools who are in the same boat as us had a meeting at Monroe High School to discuss ways that we can help the OHSA fix the situation and provide a little bit more level playing field because speaking frankly, the size gap between schools in Division I is insane.
Justin,
We're around.
Do you mind, I know Andy's a numbers guy, so you probably want to know what he's talking about. Just kind of explain, let's talk basketball. 4 divisions, explain how it works.
Yeah, so Division I in basketball or a 4-division sport, the margin is if you have 300, and I don't know the exact numbers.
So it goes from 0 to whatever for 4.
Yeah, so starting working backwards, 0 to, we'll call it 120 kids will be Division 4. 120 to roughly 190 will be Division 3. 190 to like 300 will be Division 2. And then Division 1 is anything bigger than that.
300 to infinity. Right?
So we're going 300. I think our numbers were around 350 or so in both boys and girls this year. We were competing or in the same bracket as schools that had 1,500 students in the boys or girls division. So you can see the discrepancy or the disparity, and it's not us making excuses. It's the reality of the situation. The other divisions have much smaller margins or enrollment windows to compete against. So I don't say that again as an excuse, but I do want you to know that we are working tirelessly, I would say, to try to adjust that to make it more equitable for our student athletes in our programs. And it has, I would say, a great deal of support down here in the Southwest region. I think the total number was 18 at Monroe, 18 schools at Monroe. And we have reached out to the OHSAA, and they want to hear our conversation. So making progress in that area, and it's one that they've known about for a while, but they just haven't done anything with it. So those are the tournament highlights. Individual accolades. Bryson Basson was the Defensive Player of the Year in the SWAC. Sully Spencer, for the second consecutive year, was the Player of the Year in boys soccer. Addie Johnson was the Player of the Year in girls soccer, and Sarah McGinnis was the Athlete of the Year in girls tennis. Kudos to them. Obviously, every single one of those would give praise to their teammates for helping them along the way, but I wanted to give them a shout out for their recognition. Collegiate signings, this just happened last week. The NCAA has changed the signing schedule a little bit, so we had 2 student athletes sign in the fall, and we're anticipating quite a few more in the spring. So this is the early sign. Morgan Barnes is I believe, and Jake, you can correct me on this, I believe the first triathlete in school history here at Ross High School. So she is going on a Division II scholarship to Lenore Ryan in South Carolina, I believe. And then Savannah Holmes just signed her national letter of intent to go play soccer at Kent State University. So congratulations to those two. We're looking forward to following their careers at the next level. And then the coaches of the year, none of these individuals would want this recognition, but they need to be recognized. George McDonald was the boys coach of the year for cross country. Coach Beener was the girls soccer coach of the year, 3rd consecutive recognition. And Coach Bolin was the girls tennis coach of the year for the 3rd consecutive season as well. And just briefly, the process for that, those are peer-appointed titles. So their peers vote on it, and they acknowledge their efforts. So congratulations to those coaches on a phenomenal year. And then one additional accolade, kind of unique, Coach Bolin just received the Greater Cincinnati Tennis Coaches Association Distinguished Coach Award. So really happy for Coach Bolin and her staff, and Siri wanted to talk, sorry. A huge accomplishment for Coach Bolin. Middle school, I don't need to read these, but just so you can see them, and I'll share this with the board as well, had another really good fall. Just wanted to give you these numbers. We are about 10% down from the previous year at both the middle school and high school for participation. And the number that I'm most proud of in probably this entire presentation is that with all of the things that our kids go through, our average GPA was 3.38 across the department. That's a heck of an accomplishment given what we put on our kids. So congratulations to them. The last thing I just want to kind of fill you in on, and Dr. Conkle's going to be mad, I'm going to need like a 2-minute addition to my window of time. Yeah, so I apologize. I thought I could do it. It's not possible. This is really the thing that gets me going each day, is thinking about how we can expand our offerings and how we can grow our kids in a more comprehensive approach. And this is through our student athlete leadership team. This year we have 80 student athletes at the high school level. We've moved our meetings to during the extended Ram Bell. Our kids did not want to wake up at 6:30 on Friday mornings, so we're doing it in the extended Ram Bell bi-weekly. And this is a testament to Mr. Richards and his efforts over the years to get this organization going, and we're certainly trying to continue that. The one thing I wanted to touch base on that's a little new this year is what we just debuted today called the Champions Challenge. This is something I'm really excited about and kind of see where it takes or how it takes shape. Essentially, if you're familiar with Harry Potter and the house system, basically there's a point system, and our seniors drafted teams within our SALT group. So there's teams of roughly 4 kids, 20 captains. They will receive points for attending Ross events, participating in community service. Their quarterly grades, we're rewarding A's and B's for the points for those grades, and then mentorship experiences. And I told the members of SALT today, this is really what SALT is all about. Is far more than the athletic space. It's doing the community service. It's being visible for your young people. But it's also taking care of business in the academic realm as well. And so at the end of the year, and this is where the kids got really excited, we're going to start a new tradition called the Champions Dinner, where we are going to go to the precinct with the winning team and celebrate their accomplishments, both as student athletes, but also for winning the Champions Challenge. So I'm excited to see this kind of take shape, and there's things down the road to kind of expand upon that, but I'm getting the Oscars music to cut off my speech here, sorry. All right, and then last thing, and this list is not comprehensive, so I tried to make it broad. I could not have made it through the fall season without the help of the greatest athletic secretary, Megan Mingus Hook, She has been phenomenal to work with. Pay to play has been entirely basically managed by her as far as making sure our accounts are up to date and everything like that. So I wanted to thank her. And then event workers, volunteers, our department couldn't exist without these people. I did want to give a little bit of a plug, I guess, for our youth organizations, because as you saw at the beginning of this presentation, the success that is showing itself in a sustained manner is a testament to our feeder systems. It couldn't happen without them, and we have some really, really good ones here in Ross. And then finally, just a thank you to our parents for everything they do to make our student athletes' lives and our coaches' lives a heck of a lot easier and making this place so special to be at. So I was only 3 minutes over. That's it.
Well done.
Mr. Kleinfelder, do you have any questions?
Not at this time. Good job.
Mr. Chanel?
I just think it'd be remiss to, very impressive, and also give you kudos for your first semester as athletic director. So, well done, Mr. Beck.
The leadership that you talked about at the end, yeah, is that limited just to high school kids at this point?
Yes, it is a high school right now. Just this is the pilot.
Right. And then you hit on it at the very, very end, and in the mission statement, and Jake had a lot to do with this before, but it's athletes of all ages and all sports, and we continue to have really good youth programs and continue to excel in all sports. And that's, you and I have been to places where not all sports matter as much. Some may matter more than others, but here at Ross, every sport matters, and you can tell the effort you guys have put into all the sports. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Webb?
No, I mean, thanks for presenting this information, and thanks for all that you're doing. I really like the idea that the Champions Challenge, and it's just we're just keeping up with our the co-curricular idea and athletics, and merging the two. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Now, Mr. Richards, I think he was in second place his first year in the fall as athletic director in all sports. So you're ahead of him already, so that's good.
I did use his presentation template, so I will say that.
So Mr. Beck comes with gifts, so you have a pullover.
Oh, not, yeah, I
that
got
is
mine.
from
I
Mr.
got mine
Beck,
the other
so
day.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Conkle, what
Yep,
do we
so
have
next we're going to transition into the 5-year forecast with Mrs. Logan. In your packet, you have a copy of the PowerPoint, and then you also have a copy of the 5-year forecast, which is also on board docs for the public. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Logan to discuss the 5-year forecast while Mr. Castater sets up.
Good evening. It is that time. We had the 5-year forecast to review, and I feel like we really talked a lot about numbers in the last board meeting. So we're going to talk through this and talk about high level. This will not be getting down into the weeds. When I present a 5-year forecast, I don't go line by line. We're going to talk about, things that bubble up to the top, and I think that you're going to be interested in and that are notable.
10 days, Ken. 10 days.
Got it. Okay, so let's start with why are we talking about this and what is the purpose of a 5-year forecast? So a 5-year forecast starts with historical data. So it's going to give you 3 years of data, actuals, and then it's going to take the current year plus 4 more, so that's your 5-year forecast. This 5-year forecast, the last time you looked at this, it ended in 2026. So now we've added on 2027. It is one of those tools that we utilize as for management of the school district, and we do look at this document. It is not a document that we go through and we file it and then we never look at it again. It's also a snapshot financial report. So it's based on assumptions for today, November 17th, 2022. And so if the assumptions change, the numbers will change. And as I mentioned, there is a legal requirement. We need to file this twice a year. It used to be October. They changed it to November, and so November and May. Also noted, and I'm not sure that people even realize this, but prior to this year, you had to the requirement was you had to file the five-year forecast. There have been changes now, and you must file a board-approved five-year forecast, which didn't make sense that it didn't say that before, but. Okay, so what are those notable revenue assumptions? We will be going through an update to our values in Butler County in 2023, which will then impact collections in calendar year 2024. What we are estimating for that update is a 4% increase in values for residential and agricultural values, and we're saying flat on the commercial and industrial. The last time our value was reappraised was in 2020, and we saw over a 10% increase for res ag and also almost 11% increase for commercial and industrial. The other thing I want to mention that is happening to our school district currently is Rockies Express is doing something that Rover and Nexus have already done. And what they've done is they have filed for a 45% reduction in their pipeline values. So when they file this, they don't have to pay the full amount that is actually due on their taxes. They can do something called, they can submit tender payments. So while this appeal is underway, and they have appealed on $10.2 million, a reduction of that. So basically what this means is until that is ruled upon, they are giving us $271,000 less in taxes per year. So we have taken out that value in this forecasted period because we don't want to count that as revenue and value if the appeal actually goes through. So that has actually been taken out. Our income tax, we're estimating 4% growth for this year, and then moving forward 2%. Yep. The first year that's reflected for Rockies Express was actually this last tax collection period. So it's actually happening right now. And that was the first time. And that's when we noticed it. When we got our collection, we're like, wait a minute, this looks lower. And then found out there was an appeal.
So, Mrs. Logan, how long could that go on for? Multiple years?
So Rover and Nexus, it's been pending since 2020. So this could go on for years, unfortunately. So when we look at those revenues, this graph goes back to 2015 and looks forward through this forecasted period. The last time we saw an increase in revenues was really during that additional 0.5% income tax that was put on in 2019. And I know we've talked about this. It takes 3 years before you see the full collection of an income tax. And you will see that. So it was passed in 2019. In 2020, you saw a little bit of an increase. You're going to see the major increase in 2021. And then in 2022, last year, you finally saw that full collection, the increase of based on that income tax. So when we talk about our expenditures, and we talked about this at the last meeting, 84% of our expenditures is in wages and benefits. And so when we look at wages and looking at what should we be predicting for increases, I mean, to put a 0% in for wages is not realistic. I mean, we're looking right now with inflation rates, wages increasing nationwide, everywhere. This is for planning purposes only. But these are the increases that were in the last 5-year forecast, and we have carried them forward. Of course, anything that actually happens, again, these are assumptions, and so once we know more, those will change from assumptions to knowns, but this is what was put in the forecast previously, and we have carried it forward, which is 1% this year, 2.5% the next 2 years, and then for 2026 and 27 and 2%. Our steps annually are costing us 2.1%. Also notable, wages and benefits that we are currently paying out of our ESSER funds, those federal dollars that came to us, we will use up all of that money, and in 2024, those expenditures will come back on the general fund, which are about $300,000. We've mentioned this before, but we are looking at a 17.9% increase in our health insurance rates coming up in January. So we are estimating for FY24, 12% and 6% beyond that. On the expenditure side, again, the graph going back from 2015, moving forward through 2027, and you're going to see in those out years, you'll see that 5.7% in 2024, and that reflects those ESSER expenditures coming back on the general fund. So that's why you see a bigger blip there. So this snapshot should look familiar from our last presentation and the last time we discussed. You're going to see the red coming in 2025. We are underwater in 2025, the third year of this forecast, which means that the state oversight will come back. We will be in precautionary status. Next year, fiscal year 24, based on these assumptions, 10 days of cash at the end of the fiscal year. I think this picture speaks for itself. It's ugly. It's very, very ugly. Options and next steps. Additional revenue. Our current financial situation is the revenue is not keeping up with our expenditure growth. So we're going to need either additional revenue, reduce expenditures, or do a combination of both. This is not new to you all. You have been in this mode for a while. And so in summary, we are in a financial crisis in this district. The forecast does confirm that we are back in precautionary status. Cash is depleted in the third year of the 5-year forecast. And we have a short timeline to review all of the options and make decisions on how to move forward, because the deadlines, if it is chosen to go back on the ballot, May's that next opportunity. And I believe February 1 is that deadline. So there's a lot to do in a short amount of time. So questions?
Mr. Kleinfelder, do you have any questions?
Just one thing. So the state recommends 60 days cash flow. So 10 days, 853,000 and change. So to be at the state, we'd need 5,122,000 roughly. Correct? If I'm reading that right. We need 6 times that amount.
Well, and I'm not sure. Do you have a board policy that and I apologize, I should know this, but do you have a board policy that sets a requirement or?
I don't think we do.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, 60 is that threshold that no
Yes.
less than 2 months, but we are, yeah, this year we're starting on that downward trail. Mhm.
Mr. Chanel, or, I'm sorry, Mr. Clapper, did you have something else?
Well, and then I also believe the first year, my previous term, the pipeline changed what was going through the pipes by some chemical means that wasn't taxable. And we lost a bunch of money. I think every district did at that point. It was, instead of liquid propane, it was semi-solid propane. They added some chemicals. So that all passes through untaxed. And I think, that,
Yes.
you know, so they are beginning to play the game that, hey, we're not gonna pay all this because, so we're probably closer to, I don't know, $800,000, $900,000 a year over the last
And it's
years
a
lost.
nice game to play because while you're going through the appeal, you don't have to pay. Although, if they lose on the appeal, then they're gonna owe that money back. But they're making their bets that they're gonna win, I guess.
No further questions.
Mr. Chanel, do you have any questions?
Yeah, you know, part of, outside of the, just the lack of increase in revenues, part of the story is also the changes to the teacher retirement system and how that's slowed down retirements and that turnover from the experienced teachers to the new teachers and how that impacts. Any changes, I guess, kind of what annual retirement assumptions do you have in there for the next, built into the 5-year forecast? Similar to the more recent years, or any kind of remission back to, pre some of those changes?
We do not have, so the assumptions that are in the 5-year forecast are based on our most recent trends. We don't have anything assumed saying, for example, in the 3rd year of the forecast, we're going to see a lot of people retire. So it's just based on that
Okay.
most recent trend.
I think it's the more conservative approach to do that.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Mrs. Hayes, do you have any questions?
Just about the health, cost, did we submit the appeal for the notice of leave or?
We have not done any sort of action on that. We are gathering information to find out what our options are, but we have not done anything official yet.
I didn't know if, I thought we had something we could say, if we sent it, then it started the clock, and if we didn't use it, we weren't deemed.
We can check on that and find out whether that has to be a formal board action or whether
Wasn't-
Dr. Conkle can do it.
Was that with Haran? Was that the?
Whether we can send notice that we are looking at our intent to BHP.
Yeah, I think the bylaws say 30 days and then 6 months, so 2 different times we have to communicate with our current plan.
So you guys are basically talking about,
We talked
Just
at the
looking at other options.
A
Yeah,
letter
gotcha.
to other options,
Gotcha, gotcha.
just
Yeah.
to like be
Can't we just
fiscally.
send a letter every year saying we're looking and we're gonna shop it? Like, why do we have, why do we have to?
Sure.
I mean,
Yes,
we
you
just-
could.
We didn't just keep rotating that through.
I mean, healthcare costs are up, and all insurance policies are raised. I just question is 17.9
yeah,
equivalent.
especially in the middle of the year.
Apples to apples,
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to do our due diligence too, to make
Right.
sure every year if we can
Because our
find.
fiscal year for healthcare is January, it's not July, right?
Correct, yeah.
So yeah, my recollection is we can send the notice, but we don't have to actually pull out at the end.
Yeah, we can send an intent.
Yeah.
And we can find out whether that needs to be official board action or whether Dr. Conkle can send that on behalf of the
Okay.
district.
I'll find out.
That was the.
Mrs. Webb, do you have any questions? No? That's, no questions for me either. I've seen it before, so. Dr. Kunkel, what do we have next?
Yeah, I would like to ask if we can go into executive session for personnel reasons. Next steps.
Can we have a motion to go into executive session for personnel reasons, please?
Motion.
Can we have a first?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, can we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hayes, Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Schnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle?
Yes.